Yo, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, yo, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, I am my number one fan. I'm trying to get you from here to there. I'm trying to show niggas it ain't fair. How I just came up, but you not there. Stuck in the same situation you been in. They got the plug, you got the sound. You not just a groupie that's hanging around. They got the stage, but you bring the lights. It's enough room at the top, we ain't gotta fight. I am my number one fan. I am that legend you stand for. When the crowds disperse, we'll see what you stand for.
Hey, family.
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
How y'all doing out there today?
Hope everybody's great.
And today, hopefully it's a beautiful day in your neighborhood.
Yeah, it's always a beautiful day in my neighborhood. I woke up this morning.
Yeah, sure, doggone right. So today we want to come and talk to y'all about a topic that not exactly sure how, if people understand how much it really affects the neighborhood.
Right.
One way or another. So we're going to talk to you about abuse today.
Yes.
And abusive relationships. And how that affects, in our opinion, our neighborhood. As y'all know, we normally get down.
Yeah.
So, Brother Arnold.
So, real quick, there are many different types of abuse. And abuse can be caused by someone close to you, a loved one. It also can be caused by someone that's not close to you and not a loved one. There's physical abuse. And physical abuse is any type of physical harm to another person, such as kicking, punching, slapping, or hitting, or forcing a partner to use substance, or controlling medication, or refusing medical care, strangulation, burning, and using weapons such as knives, guns, and other weapons.
Okay.
There's also an abuse called mental abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Mental abuse is when a partner uses mind games to control their loved ones, by using some tactics such as causing undue fear, stalking, refusing to let a person go anywhere, isolating a person, humiliating or shaming the person, intimidating the person, showing extremely jealous toward that person, blaming your partner for everything, insulting or calling names, and making this person feel bad about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's also sexual abuse, which we all know is not really about sex, but it's about power and control.
Right.
When a person forces their partner to perform any type of sexual behavior without their consent is a sexual abuse. And some of these are convincing a person to have sex without birth control, physically hurting the person while having sexual relationship, having sexual activity with someone who is not coherent, intoxicated, or afraid to say no, and making a person have sex with others against their will. There's also child abuse, which can include a psychological and sexual and physical mistreatment of a child. This can be done by the parent or any caregiver of the child, and it may be something that is done or something withheld from a child that can be used to cause some type of harm. And some of the examples of these are beating, hitting, kicking, slapping, choking, strangulation, pulling hair, shaking, throwing, dropping, and biting and scratching. But we're going to talk about abuse in relationships.
Did you say emotional abuse too?
Yeah, I think I did put emotional abuse down. Did I? No, I did not.
Yeah, there is one more.
Emotional abuse. I think emotional abuse is very important. Do you have a definition for that?
Emotional abuse, I don't have a definition.
Wait a minute.
But I think that emotional abuse is probably one of the more devastating one,
right?
In my opinion, because it doesn't have to be because you think physical sometimes, oh yeah, that pain or whatever else, but emotionally, that sometimes that emotion just never goes away.
Okay, so emotional abuse is this. This is the type of abuse that is likely most common. It consists of any behavior designed to hurt another person mentally.
Right.
Such as yelling, threats, shaming, humiliation, shaming, among the other tracks. So that takes a toll on your mind.
So, so with that, with that part, also comes with rejection.
Uh-huh.
Disregarding someone's opinions. It could also have isolation, victim blaming.
Right.
It's so many things or patterns to this that ultimately gets into stuff like road rage and things like that. Like their overreactions to things, lying. Sometimes that emotional piece can affect you in so many different ways. And you don't realize that emotion, because most people are emotional. Most of all, we're emotional beings.
Correct.
And because of those emotions, causes us to be physical.
Right.
It causes us to have some type of addiction or whatever else. It causes so many other different things because of our emotions are out of whack, in my opinion. So as I'm looking up some information, there's some things, like I said, for me, I think the emotional one is really key. But there's some things that as we're looking it up and talking about it and thinking about it for a minute, as I said something about overreactions or yelling and screaming and victim blaming and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about when you having an argument, right? Aren't you, to some degree, trying to abuse them, at least verbally / emotionally anyway? Because a lot of times when you don't agree or whatever else, sometimes you really want to hurt the person and you don't want to touch them per se.
Right.
But how else are you going to hurt them? Most of the time it's going to be emotional.
Yeah, it's your words, your body language.
Right.
So you may not... And the person that's doing this is thinking that, I'm not physically doing anything to them.
Right.
So they think that because they're not physically hurting them, that I can say whatever I want to say.
Right.
A lot of people do not understand that words do hurt.
Yes, they do.
Words can cut you like a knife.
Right.
And this can take a toll on a person, particularly if a person has low self-esteem. Particularly if the person's background, you don't know what type of verbal, physical, or whatever type of abuse they may have endured as a child, and then you come into a relationship with a person like that, and you take advantage of that, sometimes unwillingly and unconsciously because you don't know what their past is like,
right?
And it can really take a toll on you,
right? And then as you take a look at the physical abuse. Sometimes, some people say, hey, sometimes that stuff kind of makes you stronger where, a broken bone can mend and things like that.
Right.
But that by itself lends itself to the mental and emotional abuse too.
Correct.
Because it starts to break that person down. Because if you're already mentally strong, sometimes knowing that someone can physically hurt you will start to bring you down.
Right. And even though we may look at these as individual abuses, but a lot of them do coincide and go with each other.
Right.
They go hand in hand because you, by you giving the person verbal abuse, you're giving them emotional abuse, and you may take it a little further. You might smack a person, so that's physical abuse. So all that goes hand in hand with each other.
Right. Now I do know that there was this young lady back in the day who her boyfriend used to tell her she was ugly all the time.
Right.
All the time. And told her so much that she thought that the only one that loved her was him.
Right.
So what type of abuse was that?
Oh man, that's physical, not physical, but that's mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. It's almost everything.
Right. So you never realize really what type of abuse is going, how abuse is going to come about. Mm-hmm. And where people could take that and use that to their advantage.
Right.
So in this particular case with this young lady, and my friends and I, we used to try to pull her to the side. I'm like, listen, you don't have to go through that. I understand you like him, you love him, you feel like he's the only one for you, but I'm pretty sure there will be someone else. You just have to be patient.
Right.
And sometimes when you're in that situation, you don't realize that there is an out.
Correct.
You don't see an out. You don't understand that there is someone else out there for you.
Correct.
And sometimes love can be blind. But when someone breaks you down, and they have that control on you, sometimes it's hard to see what's on the other side of that rainbow.
Yeah, but is that really love or is it just fear?
I think I would say it's probably more fear.
More fear, yeah.
Because of us being emotional beings,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be by yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be able to hug somebody, even though people say, "Oh no, I could be by myself and I'm grown and I'm this and I'm strong and da da da." You know, but a lot of times when you got to boast and brag about that, that's most of the time those are the weak people that do that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
You know, you could be sensitive and soft and say, you know, yeah, most times I'm okay, but there are times where, hey, I do want the warmth of somebody else's body.
Yeah, but I mean, why do we have to have a price to want the warmth of another person's body? Why must we subject ourselves to something, you know, verbal abuse, physical abuse, or whatever, because we have a want or a need? Because some women and men, some women will stay with a guy and he may beat her, but because he takes care of her financially, she's there because she needs that, you know. So why don't we subject ourselves to that type of treatment?
I believe it's on one hand, it's cultural.
Mm-hmm.
So for the black male,
Right.
I would say that we already struggling with self-esteem and issues anyway.
Right.
Not necessarily always feel like we're wanted and or needed or whatever else.
Right.
And if I look at our Caucasian counterparts, sometimes for some of them, they're so used to being in power, and then when their spouse has as much power, even more power, they don't know how to handle that.
Right.
So I think there are some levels to every race, you know, that in their relationship where they understood culturally when there's an imbalance somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
or perceived imbalance, not realizing that, hey, we could still be a team. You get what I mean? But when you take a look at just that imbalance, sometimes people take that to a whole nother level. And like, in order for me to regain my foothold, I have to go another route.
Right. Right.
You know, and some of that could be, you know, that person's own insecurities, or seeing that person's insecurities and just pouncing on it, you know, and to belittle that person.
And it is so amazing that in this day and age, that with all the technology we have, with all the cameras, with all, Lifetime has dedicated a whole channel to things that could happen to women and what women can look forward to on a positive note, but they still fall victim to some of this stuff.
Right. Right.
You know? And do men be abused? Sure.
Oh yeah.
Men get abused.
Well, I'll put it to you like this: do y'all think Lucy was abusing Charlie Brown every time she moved that football?
Well, some would say it wasn't, but
I mean, because
she was vindictive.
he was emotionally and physically committed to kicking that football, right? But every time he tried to, what'd she do?
Yeah, but what does that say about Charlie Brown?
I mean,
What state does that put him in?
he trusted this young lady.
But every time I trust you, you mess me over.
Well, again, that, you know, so what type of self-esteem issues did Charlie Brown have?
Right.
You know, so that's why I'm using that analogy that, hey, guys could be in that same boat. And that Charlie Brown Lucy dynamic is flipped also.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
It goes both ways. And
Correct.
and that's not, and I can't even say that's a cultural thing. I think that's just an overall human thing. One way or another, you start to put trust in somebody, and they could take the football right away from you.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't even realize it, but you're committed to being friends with that person, being in that situation in that particular moment, and don't realize that, hey, you know what? 2 weeks ago, you took the football away from me. Last season, you took the football away from me. At least in Charlie Brown Lucy's perspective, even though it's a cartoon that comes on every year, we see that football taken away from him once a year.
Once a year. You know?
You get what I mean?
So in real life, how many times have she really pulled that ball from
Yeah,
him?
because that Charlie Brown, how what's that? Almost a century old now.
Yeah.
You know, so you know when you take a look at that, sometimes